Meanwhile, in Ely, outfitters helped with BWCA evacuations, but now they're facing a different challenge. A tourism season suddenly on pause. Leslie Krebs heard from outfitters about this transition.
While wildfires continue to threaten the region, Ely and its community members have been offering their support from multiple different angles. Some even helping with evacuations. Bob Latterell and his team from Latterell Outfitters were among multiple crews that raced into the Boundary Waters, rescuing campers trapped as wildfires closed in.
So they kind of called on us and some other outfitters in our area, and we headed down there as quickly as we were able to mobilize.
Latterell says this isn't the first time they've helped with rescues, but it may be the biggest. At one point, they helped a group that was split apart by the smoke and fire.
So they were separated for an extended period of time, and then they were a little bit more traumatized, I guess.
After helping hundreds evacuate, the pace has shifted for local outfitters. Almost overnight.
We were probably running about 100 miles an hour, and now we're at a standstill.
Ginny Nelson, one of the owners of Spirit of the Wilderness Outfitters, says the sudden slowdown has businesses on edge, wondering what the rest of the season will bring now that visitors have cleared out.
I have staff that are, hoping to get paid as well, and we want to make sure we can keep them employed. So right now, it's every dollar counts.
Nelson mentioned that no matter what role a person or their business plays in the community, everyone will be impacted in some ways by these fires.
Every business in Ely is going to feel the impact, whether they're a canoe outfitter or a resort.
While outfitters like Spirit of the Wilderness know the future is still so unpredictable, but they just want people to know that Ely is still open and would love to see visitors. In Ely, Northern News Now, Leslie Krebs.